Welcome, salutations, greetings, everyone. I hope you were excited for this first part in a series of GRE improvement lectures from myself and some of my colleagues at Manhattan Prep. These will actually be occurring every single Thursday. So I would strongly recommend you subscribe, and so you get the notifications, so that other people can find them. That's always very, very helpful, not only for yourself, but also for all of us here. It really helps this channel and this series. And I'll be just asking for that periodically as we go through here. Everyone who's joined, if you have a moment, please type hello in the chat. Let me know where you're joining from. I always like to find that out. And also, as we move through this, I would also love to know where you are in your GRE preparation. This particular lecture is geared towards people who are just beginning, but if you are well advanced in your preparation, there is still definitely something here for you that I've deliberately built as something that can be applicable to everyone. So, building your personalized GRE study plan. Where do we go? How do we start with this? There's a lot to talk about today. Let's go ahead and start with what our final goal is going to be. And again, as I'm going through this, questions, comments, concerns in the chat at any time. Do not wait. Do not feel like you have to wait until I reach a good point to ask a question. Throw it in. And then, yeah, like I said, I love to see where people are joining us from. This is where we're going today. This is actually something that I built for a tutoring student of mine. It was customized to her particular plan. But the idea is, how do we prepare a study plan that is for our individual needs, yet is still in some ways flexible enough that we can adapt it as often as needed. And so this is going to be the ultimate goal of where we're going today. But before we go there, some basics about the test, which you may not know. First, score is valid for 5 years. So make sure you get that done as early as you can. You can take it 5 times in a 12-month period. You will want to take it more than once, if at all possible, which makes this second point particularly important. You must wait 21 days to retake it. Remember that number. That is going to be important to you. Moving forward from there as well, we have a cost to take it. You have a possible perfect score. Generally speaking, you're aiming for anything anywhere from 325 to 330. Especially if you're looking at MBA programs, your goal is to have quantitative in the 160s, if at all possible, and verbal right around that 160 mark. That's sort of the ideal benchmark. I know a lot of people who get into the schools that they want, get into their dream schools without hitting that benchmark, but hitting that benchmark makes it a lot easier. So again, that's right around the 160s, 165-ish quant is ideal, 160 plus verbal is ideal. Remember that there is no spell or grammar check for essay, which we're not worried about. The on-screen calculator for quant, let's put a question mark by that. You have it, but how often do you want to use it? Not that much, really. Your score is available to you immediately. However, just be aware that you may want to give yourself a little bit of leeway in terms of when a school could look it up. Now, this last point is true. It is also something that I would not recommend that anyone fixate on. Thank you, Prashumi World. Test in the next 50 days. So that is about 7 weeks. All right. We're going to talk about that. To get a 320 plus score, a lot of that's going to depend on where you start. We're going to talk about that and how you build your plan based on that and what your first step should be. That's definitely going to happen in just a few minutes here. You can choose which score is reported to your school. However, everything that I hear from admissions consultants and the people who specialize in not just the test score, but the actual admissions decisions schools like to see more than one test attempt. So if you take the test more than once, tell them that. Let them know. They like to see that. It shows planning. It shows foresight. It shows a dedication to this process that a lot of admissions departments find attractive. Again, just walking through a few basics because I don't know where everyone is. Some people are here are just beginning. You always start with the issue essay. You always spend 30 minutes on it. The score for the essay is not really going to be a determining factor. Know how to do it. Spend time on it. Learn from my mistake, actually. The last time I took an official test, I took it online at home. And because I knew that I was not worried about the issue essay, I was just taking it for the experience of verbal and quant again. I wanted to experience these shorter tests. I've been doing this for quite some time. I've seen a couple of different iterations of the GRE test. And I wanted to experience these shorter verbal and shorter quant sections. I wasn't worried about the issue essay at all. So I just spent 5 minutes crafting a short little response to the issue essay and wasn't really worried about it. Just hit submit, moved on, did my verbal, did my quant, got my score, very happy with it. Yay! And then a week later, I get an email from the test administrator saying that they will not validate my score and that if I want to be able to submit a score to schools, I need to retake the test in a test center. And it's not because they thought I cheated. There was no question of that. I was on camera the whole time. They weren't worried about that at all. It's the idea that the time differential was so extreme. I had spent so little time on the essay, but the full time in the other sections, that time differential was so extreme that it's outside of the test taker norms. And because it's outside of the test taker norms, they cannot say that it is a valid representation of how the test should operate. And so they were not going to validate my test. So you do have to do the essay. You need to have a strategy for it. Do not worry about the score. Verbal is where you worry. Quant is where you worry. That's where you want to make sure you have your focus. Your verbal and quantitative are broken into 2 sections. They will alternate, but you will not know which one comes first. And essentially the way this works is you have an initial verbal, and your performance on the initial verbal steers you towards a second verbal. So your initial verbal will take you towards either a low, middle, or high second verbal. You have an initial quant. That initial quant will steer you towards a second quant. It could have either a low, middle, or high second quant. So your ultimate goal is to absolutely crush the first verbal and first quant so that when you get to the second verbal and second quant, you are getting absolutely hammered with the hardest questions they have. That's what you want. When you're looking at that second verbal section and you're thinking, oh my God, this is so much harder than the first, that's a good thing. When you get to that second quant, you're thinking, wow, I don't know if I'll be able to finish this in time. This is so much harder than the first one. That is a good thing. It adapts to you, and it essentially forms this range. Now, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that there is a considerable amount of overlap in the score potential. If you do moderately well in the first section and go to the medium second section, but absolutely do fantastic in the medium section, you can get that. You can get a very, very high score. You'll just never get anything higher than like a 165. So there is some overlap. There is some potential to get a high score no matter what. But realistically, if we want to get that really, really high score, we want to get that really, really hard second section. And again, we're mentioning in the chat here, this is the first part of, I think, a 12 series set. Today starts with just preparation plans. All the lessons after today, one every single week, every single Thursday. Subscribe, get notifications, show up for every single one. It's going to be the core elements that you need to build a strong verbal and strong quant score over every single one of the next 12 weeks. All right. To the heart of what we want to talk about today, building your study plan. Step 1, know your deadline. Rishimi, want to give a test in the next 50 days. I would actually love for you to tell me in the chat, is that a deadline or is that a desire? Because the two are different. And while I'm looking for that response in the chat, I would also like to hear that from everyone. If you have a deadline or a desired test date, let me know. Second thing we're going to talk about today, what do you need to improve first? And then the last thing, how do I improve? It's going to be cycling back to this idea, building this plan for me that carries me through to the improvement and the score change that I want. Know your deadline. Deadline is less than 4 months. If your deadline is in less than 4 months, you have a different priority list than someone whose deadline is 4 months or more away. So Prashimi, this part is for you. First, get a practice test done immediately, like tomorrow, this weekend. Get a practice test done. I would say take the one on the Manhattan Prep site. The only thing that you should not do not take one of the official tests on the ETS website yet. Don't make that your first test. Hold those official practice tests until you are within 2 to 4 weeks of your actual test date. Hold those. Start with Manhattan Prep. Everybody can take that first practice test for free. Get that practice test done. You have to do that now because in less than 4 months, you need an immediate assessment of where you need to start. You don't really have a luxury of, I can just get all of certain foundations and just get a good baseline. Your baseline is where it is. You need to find out where your baseline is, not where it needs to be right now. Set 2 or 3, definitely 2 if you can. 3 is better. Official test dates. This is where that 21-day number is so important. Know your deadline. And what I would recommend is walk a week, maybe 10 days back from your deadline. Set your last official test a week to 10 days away from your deadline. If your score is available immediately, why a week to 10 days? Well, you might need the time to address any irregularities. For example, like mine, where I had such a strong time differential between my essay and the verbal and quant sections that they were not going to validate my score, and I was going to have to schedule a test in a test center. Don't make your last official test the day of the deadline, which gives you no opportunity to address any such irregularities. And these things can happen. The other thing that might happen, don't wait until the day of the deadline because technical difficulties can happen. You could have a power outage. Who knows? There could be a power outage at the test center. Don't set your official test date on the deadline. Give yourself a week to 10 days back. Then from that last official test, walk back 21 days and another 21 days and schedule the previous tests. And go ahead and set those test dates down. If you can, go ahead and register for those test dates. Have those done. Make sure that you have them settled. The other thing that I would strongly recommend, if you can, is do one of your test dates online, like I did at home, and one of your test dates in a test center. The two environments are different. The test will feel a little bit different, maybe substantially different, depending on how you react. And I find that people have a very hard time predicting which environment will be better for them without one experience of each. The advantage of doing it at home, you know the environment. You know the temperature, you know the room, you know the sounds, you know the noise levels. Hell, you know where the bathroom is. Just basic things like that, which can be reassuring. You don't have a break, but just all of these things where like that knowledge can be comforting. The downside to taking it at home is you have to prepare the space. You have to have a space that is appropriate for that. And you have to have a completely rock solid internet connection that you know is not going to drop. All these things have to be true before you take it at home. The advantage of a test center, everything is done for you. Everything about the computer setup, everything about the room setup, it is all done for you. The disadvantage is you don't know the environment. You don't know how the room's going to feel. You don't know what noises are going to be around you, that kind of thing. So try to get one of each. Once you have your official test date done, build a practice test schedule. Within 3 weeks of an official test date, you want to be taking a practice test every week leading up to your first official test. So, presuming if you're taking the test in the next 50 days, in 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks from today, you want to start taking one practice test a week. Don't take a practice test a week up and before that point. But within your first practice test, start taking a practice test a week around 3 weeks before that first official test, excuse me. Then, between each official test, plan one practice test. You don't need a lot of practice tests in between official practice tests. And if you're scheduling them every 21 days, you won't have a lot of time for a lot of practice tests in between official test dates. The practice tests in between official test dates are just confirmation. They are just ways to reinforce the habit of the timing on the test and the habit of which problems you do and do not do. So build your practice test schedule, one a week leading up to the first test, and then one, maybe two, but definitely not more than two, in between sequential official test attempts. Do all of this before you begin studying. Get your practice test done, set your official test dates, put your practice test schedule on your calendar. Then use those results of that first practice test to plan your initial study sessions. If your deadline is more than 4 months away, you have a little bit more of a luxury of time. Again, start with your official test dates. Start with your practice test schedule. Get those done, much the same way as if your deadline is in less than 4 months. But I would recommend if your deadline is more than 4 months away, don't start with a practice test right now. Take some time, maybe 2 weeks, to solidify math and vocabulary foundations. There are lots of resources for that. You can find a lot of free resources for that on the Manhattan Prep page. You can find a lot of free resources for that around YouTube. There are lots of things out there. Take some time, solidify your math foundations, solidify vocabulary. Then take your first practice test. After you've taken that first practice test, then you take those practice test results, you plan your initial study sessions. That's step one. Know your deadline, plan out your schedule. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right. So, excuse me. I don't want today to be just me talking. I'm a teacher. That's what I do. I work with actual problems and I show people how to solve them. Everyone take a minute. Give this problem some consideration. If you're at home watching this on YouTube later, I hope you're taking this time to solve yourself. A few more seconds. If anyone wants to share answers in the chat, I would love to see. You don't have to, but I'd be very intrigued to know where everyone is. Krishna, in 20 days. All right. That's going to be fun. You're going to have a challenge there. We're going to talk about that in just a second. In just a little bit, we're going to talk about what to improve first. I'm going to give you a different list of quant and verbal. And then when I start giving you that list, if you know for a fact that some of the things are already there, I will give you supplements to that list. So, to solve this problem, everything about this question type is about defending against answer choice D. The relationship cannot be determined. That's never an answer choice that you want to see on a math question. Nobody likes to see math questions like, hey, it's a math problem, but there's not an answer. Nobody's going to like that. And that's one of your biggest concerns on this question type, defending against choice D. And so we have is this idea that we have 3 numbers, and I would go ahead and just shape it out here. 3 numbers. Oh, let me get my pen tool back. Come back. And I know that they have a range of 2. They have a median of 4.4. Now, interesting about statistics. The number on the left cannot be higher than the middle number. But could it be equal? Is it possible that the number on the left could be another 4.4? The number on the right cannot be smaller than 4.4, but could it be equal? Is it possible that the number on the right might be another 4.4? They cannot all be 4.4s because you must have a range of 2. But could there be some repetition here? And you go back to the text, they never said they needed to be distinct numbers or unique numbers. And so your question might be, well, let's consider 2 options here. Both options have to have a 4.4 in the middle. That's the definition of median. But if my first number is another 4.4, my last is 6.4. Conversely, I could say, what if my last number is a 4.4 and my first number is a 2.4? Those are both options. And so if you come back to consider our answer choices, you have one example. Greatest numbers could be 6.4, where quantity A is greater. So answer choices B and C have to be wrong. Quantity B is not greater right now. It cannot be choice B. The 2 quantities are not equal right now. It cannot be choice C. We have this or. That largest number could have been another 4.4. So apparently, there's at least one universe where quantity A is not greater. And so that is actually the answer choice for this problem. Now, one person was putting in the chat C, but then also or A. And that language, that phrasing, when it's a this or this, it could be equal or it could be one larger, or it could be that one larger or this one larger. That's when you know it's D. But this is one aspect of things that we need to know. We need to be able to look at a question type like this and say, I need to address whether D is an option. I need to look for an example and then a counterexample. If anyone wants to throw in any comments or concerns, I'm happy to see them. Krishna, 20 days. Are you more concerned about verbal or about quantitative? Same for Shumi. 50 days. Are you more concerned about quantitative or more concerned about verbal? I'm going to show each. But if you will let me know which one you want to see first, I'll do that. Let's see. Verbal, please. Then let's go here. My verbal needs improvement. if you have less than 2 months, reading comprehension. Vocab, it is, I'll be honest, I don't know how we could manage to do a comprehensive vocab study in less than 2 months. The smallest word list that I've ever seen that is still comprehensive enough to be useful is 500 words. That would be a lot to do in 2 months. Because vocab studies, you have to understand that more than about 10 to 15 words a day, you're not really registering the words anymore. You need to be able to say, I'm going to study the words on one day, study words the next day, and then sort of do a little bit of repetition of old words. You need to do a lot of mixed review in vocab as well. So start with reading comp if you have less than 2 months. Make sure that you have good processes for the longer reading comprehension passages, the ones where you've got multiple questions per passage versus the more short argument-based ones where it'll be only one question per passage. Make sure you have good strategies for those. Make sure you know how they build the wrong answers for those. In less than 2 months, the only vocab stuff that I would recommend is vocab problems where you did know all of the words, because that is where you can actually practice your analysis of the problem. You can't, I won't say can't, but it is immensely difficult to expand vocabulary enough, as much as we would need in less than 2 months. But what you can do is expand your sentence and problem analysis. So go to the ones where you know all the words and you realize that I kind of got lucky here. Yes, I got it right, but I wasn't really sure which of these words was going to be the correct choice. Or you know all the words and you got it wrong. Both of those reactions indicate that there is something in the analysis of the sentence itself that could be that could be a point of progression for you. So if less than 2 months, that's where you go. If you have more than 2 months, start with daily vocabulary. 10 words a day, maybe 15, but I would not recommend more than 15. I would just recommend 10. And the main thing with vocabulary that nobody ever does. All of these vocab lists are great. Manhattan Prep has one. Princeton Review has one, I'm sure. Companies, all these other companies, all companies have vocab lists. I'm sure they do. And it's so frustrating that there's no vocab list from the official guide, when the official guide is where you'd want most to have a vocab list. You want it. You need it. You need to build it. Start with the official guide. Get into that book, any page, with any sample verbal problem, whether it's text completion, sentence equivalence, or reading comprehension, any type of question, whether it's in the prompt, whether it's in the answer choices, anywhere at all. If you see a word that you do not immediately name a synonym for, that word needs to go on your personal vocabulary list. If it's in the official guide, they're flat out telling you, hey, we're going to use this word. It's exactly the type of thing that we will use. So make sure you know it. Honestly, one of the hardest things there is actually being honest when you don't know a synonym. It's very common when I teach classes to have a reaction say, hey, Chris, what does this word mean? And I'll say, oh, well, in this context is kind of like, and I'll give this sort of vague sentence where I just like using it in another sentence. And the person will say, okay, that's fine, thanks. And I'll let the conversation carry on for 5 minutes. And I'll stop and I'll say, is nobody going to call me on that? You asked me, what does the word mean? And I could not give you a synonym. I don't know that word. Let's look it up. Be honest with yourself when you cannot just flat out name a synonym. Start with the official guide. When you have that done, then go to any private company's word lists. Then, as you're making vocabulary a priority, intersperse that with reading comprehension studies. That's the idea if you've got more than 2 months. What if my quant needs improvement? If your quant needs improvements, again, we're looking at know your mechanics first. Notice that this is not dependent on time frame. no matter what, make sure you know your mechanics. Make sure you have exponents and roots. Make sure you have quadratics. Make sure you have inequalities. Make sure you have percent translations. These are the 4 baseline mechanics that everyone must have to get a high score in the quantitative. If you have all of these, the next step would be statistics and geometry. Those would be the order of priority there. So let me go ahead and make some handwritten notes here. This would be my own personal priority list. After these 5, I'd probably say geometry next, because geometry has so much memorization to it that you can make some good improvement in geometry with just memorization. Then statistics. Then I would probably say word problems of other varieties. Now, keep in mind, if you're studying your mechanics for percent translations, you're going to see actually a lot of overlap between percent translations and word problems. Those two show up together a lot. So just be aware of that. But start with the first 4. Make sure those mechanics are completely solid, because the last thing you want to do is have math notation on your paper and not know what to do next. Make sure the moment you got the math notation on your paper, you're like, I know the next step. After that, know your strategies. Code Mode is the Manhattan Prep 5-pound book, a good resource for GRE Quant. It is basically a GRE Quant Bible. In my opinion, it's actually better than the official guide. It is massive. It is wonderful. It is organized. It's organized. You can say, hey, when I need to practice a particular question type, here's where I find it. And here's where I can build a list of them and see different question types of this content area. So yeah, 5-pound book, beautiful thing. All right. There is a reason why the Manhattan Prep 5-pound book jumped to like the #1 study guide bestseller list on Amazon when it was introduced. It was just a massive need that was filled. So yeah, you really want the 5-pound book, especially for quantitative. It's good for everything. You got a lot of verbal questions in there too, but it's basically a quantitative Bible. Know your strategies. Make sure you know the quant comparison question format. Your quant sections are always going to start with 4 or 5 quant comparison questions, and that question type will form the foundation for either a very strong score or a very struggling score. Because if you know that, not only you get them right, you get them right very, very quickly. And you're getting them right, and you're building a bank of time that you can devote to other problems later on. So know that initial question format. And then the final thing for strategies, and this is something that is so foundational and so many people don't do it. There's just enough traditional algebra on the test to make people convinced that you have to do traditional algebra when in fact you don't. In fact, I would say maybe 40%, maybe a little bit more of the questions on each section of the quant are questions where you don't need traditional algebra. And in fact, knowing a number test strategy will be much, much better than traditional algebra. So learn when you can number test instead of doing traditional algebra. 161 verbal and 159 quant. 165 verbal in the second official test just a week prior. What should I do to push past 165 in both verbal and quant? Drew, that's a tough thing. Pushing past 165 in both verbal and quant. When they made the test shorter about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, they made getting past that 165 mark really, really difficult. I've seen people who only miss, I think, 1 question. They don't get a 170. They don't get a 169. They get like a 167. And so even missing 1 question can drop you something like 3 points from your perfect score. So getting past 165 in both verbal and quant, you really need to get it to a level where you're only missing 1 quantitative, maybe missing 2 verbal. Maybe you can miss 2 quant and 3 verbal, but I don't think it would be more than that. To get there, on the quantitative side, the first thing you have to do is you have to be incredibly fast in quant comparison. The second thing that you have to do is you have to know every single geometry thing that can come up immediately. You see a geometry problem and you need to immediately be able to have formulas dropping down onto your paper. Both of those are about speed. Quant comparisons can be fast. Most geometry won't be fast unless you have the immediate recognition, and then it can just be as fast as it needs to be. After that, pushing past a 165 in quant is going to be, I gotta say, knowing every single topic backwards and forwards except probability, combinatorics, and normal distribution. Those three are the things that you would study for last. Make sure everything else is completely solid, and then do those three: probability, combinatorics, normal distribution stuff last. Getting past a 165 in verbal, honestly, you have to make sure that you're not missing any reading comprehension. That is the core foundation for getting past a 165 in verbal, because you're going to hit vocab questions where you don't know all the words. It's going to happen. It happens to everyone. I have never taken an official test where I walked through the entire verbal section, both verbal sections, like, I know all the words, and I knew all the words all along. That has never happened. And you're talking to somebody who has done GRE work for 10 years now, and I did LSAT work for like 10 years before that. I've been in this universe quite some time. I've been doing the test prep stuff for a while. So vocab is always going to be a bit of a gamble. Getting past 165 in verbal, the foundation for that is making sure that you get every single reading comprehension right. How to improve reading comprehension timing. Know how they build the wrong answers. You can do things about improving your reading speed and improving your note-taking speed. That can happen. But the first thing about reading comprehension timing is to look at 5 choices, or if it's like select all that apply and you have 3 of them, to immediately look at some of them and go, at least 3 of these are wrong. Or if it's the select all that apply and you have 3 of them, and how to know when one of those is immediately wrong. Know how they build the wrong answers so you can immediately, like within inside 20 seconds, start knocking answer choices off the list. That for me is the biggest thing for reading comprehension timing. There's other stuff you want to do, but know the wrong answers first. Again, I'm a teacher. That's what I do. And I can't do one of these without showing you at least a few problems to practice. Everyone take a few moments. Give this one a try. Probably the most common issue that I see people have in the verbal section is that they think that they are supposed to make their choices interesting. They think that the test wants you to select a choice which is in some way developing the idea in a new direction. And that's not what you want to do. We don't want anything new. We don't want anything interesting. We want a choice that mimics something already in the sentence. What type of bacteria are we talking about? We are talking about drug-resistant bacteria. So I want a word which would be the same or most similar thing to drug resistant. And which word would be the most similar to drug resistant? Anybody have something in the chat? I would love to see it. If it's drug resistant, it's probably widespread. That's probably true. But that's developing to the next idea. What happens when a bacteria becomes drug resistant? Oh, well, then it probably becomes widespread. But that's beyond what we're talking about there. Don't go there. Drug resistant, I don't know how immature would fit there. I don't know if it would be benign. Notorious, I'm sure there are bacteria or bacterial strains that might be considered notorious in the medical field. But that's not necessarily the same as being drug resistant. Really robust. If it is robust, it is hardy, it is resistant to harm, it would be drug resistant. Like I said, I can't do one of these things without showing y'all a few problems to at least practice on, and at least giving you a few ideas of here's how I build some strategy. So here's where we're going to end. We end where we started, but general idea first. Now, I put these up as study sessions. If you have more than 4 months, it should be one study session a day. If you have less than 4 months, whenever you can, do more than one study session a day, but do not do more than 5 hours in a day. Like even if you have the day completely free, do not do more than 5 hours in one day. And the best is actually to keep any study session 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes, but 90 minutes is really pushing it. 60 minutes, walk away. And you may notice here, one of the key themes for how you build your personal cycle is not the same thing twice in a row. So you see here, we say content area 1. Maybe that's exponents and quantitative. Maybe that's strengthen the argument, questions, and reading comprehension. Content area 1, do a study session on that. Perhaps do a review of your strategies for it, and then try a few problems. Maybe just jump straight to problems and practice it. Whatever you think is most important for you. But the main thing is, when you move to study session 2, it is a different content area. So never the same thing in second. Christiane, that is an interesting reaction. I would love to see more in the chat about that reaction there as I'm continuing to talk about this. After you've done 2 content areas, do a mixed set. Notice that this is sort of like a break, sort of like a palate cleanser, if you will, giving your brain separation between content focus and then a review of that content focus. Notice how delayed this is. You want to have a few sessions delay between when you see content area 1 and then when you see it again. Similarly, a few delay between when you see content area 2 and when you see it again. Now, yeah, it's about biology. I am not a biologist. I am not a cognitive psychologist. However, I can tell you what these people have written. And that idea is the brain apparently has 3 types of memory. And these are colloquial terms. They're not precise. But you have working memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. When you're staying inside the same topic, you never leave working memory. And so you study for a long period of time. Your brain is never leaving working memory. Nothing is transferring to your brain's ability to recall that in a delayed sense later on. So delay on this. Rest is very important. I do not see this as often as I used to, which is a good thing. But I used to see people come in and say, Chris, I'm taking the test in 10 days. I'm going to study 4 hours every single day. I'm going to take a practice test every 3rd day. And I'll be like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please do not do that. And they do anyways. And the score goes up and then goes down. These tests are not just about what you know. They are about how you can apply it under the stressful situation of an actual test. And you need rest to be able to react well to that stress. Whether it's a full day, or at least removing one of your study sessions and saying, I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to do some yoga. Anything that is not studying. Notice, again, we see here a new content area 3. We see a palate cleanser. And then this as well. Nobody does this. In fact, let me give that a different color just to really sort of like emphasize this a little bit. I see people that never study the things that they're good at. And then all of a sudden they're not as good at that thing as good at that thing as they used to be. Make sure you put in one area of strengths into your study cycle. Again, a delay between when you see content areas and when you see a mixed review of it. So you're seeing that carry over here again. And then you see this is where it varies a little bit depending on where you are in your time frame. This is all about preparation for your new practice test. Now, depending on your time frame, that next study session might just be a mixed set, which is meant to be sort of like a short version of a practice test, in which case you recreate study session 3 where you mix sets, one quant, one verbal. But the idea is don't go into a practice test without preparing yourself for that practice test. Some mixed questions, some light review, and then a practice test. And then the cycle begins again. You review that practice test to choose new content areas, or if you didn't take a new practice test and you already have some content areas, you grab some new content areas. This is how we do it. This is what I've got today. Don't leave yet, because even though this is what I've got today, keep in mind that you've got free classes showing up all the time. And if you want to take a full class, you can use a nice little discount code here. I'm going to hold here for a minute. And I mentioned a while ago, there are a lot of free resources available for you on manhattanprep.com. Make sure you check them out. And then I'm going to leave with this last thing, the part of studying that people don't normally do. They don't review every problem. And I'm going to go and skip down here. I wish that this thing that's sitting at the bottom of the text right now was in bigger font with sparkles and flashing lights. Every time you get a question correct, something worked in that problem that can be applied to future problems. Study the questions you answer right so that you can prepare yourself to get more ones right. And that's about it. Again, this is the first part of a series. We're going to have these types of hour-long lectures every single week, Thursdays, exact same time. It'll be myself, Ryan Starr, and Logan doing these. You'll be seeing me again. I hope I'll be seeing you again. And after this is going to be more specific. It's going to be about specific question types, specific content areas, getting into some much more detailed elements of how you concretely improve a certain thing. But I hope today was something that you found helpful in terms of, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. You're like, there's so much out there. Where do I start? And again, start by defining your deadline. Start by building your schedule for practice tests. And then based on your deadline, decide whether you can build a foundation or whether you need to dive into a practice test now. That's what I've got, everybody. Does anyone have questions, comments, concerns, anything they want to address that they haven't put in the chat yet? More people might be typing in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and call it one more time. Subscribes and likes really drive this. If you found this helpful, if this is good for you, Make sure you know about all the future stuff that's going to happen. You're very, very welcome. All right. Well, looks like we're all set. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciated your time today. I really appreciated the interaction and the fact that you were giving me your own needs and letting me know where I could help you. Hopefully that'll continue in the future. Thank you all very much. Have a good day or a good night, and good luck.